question centres around the initiative by the Community Safety Initiative Fund, which your department announced on the 11th of April. And I want to find out the longevity of the fund itself, and where will it be directed in relation to communities that are affected by crime?
I thank the Deputy for raising this question, and as the Deputy would be aware, my department opened applications for the new Community Safety Innovation Fund on the 11th of April. Reflecting the success of An Garda Síochána and the Criminal Assets Bureau in identifying and seizing proceeds from criminal activity, the new fund will use money seized from the proceeds of crime to support investment in innovative community safety projects. The fund, which is expected to grow in the coming years, will have an initial outlay of €2 million for this year and will be subject to a robust evaluation at the end of year one to inform future decisions. The intention is that bids for further allocations will be part of the normal budgetary process. It is anticipated that the kind of projects which may be supported will include new additional activities not already covered by existing funding streams, intended to tackle crime or reduce the fear of crime, improve community safety, support the creation of safe and resilient communities, reduce reoffending, or divert vulnerable individuals away from engagement in criminal behaviour. This fund will ensure that the success of An Garda Síochána and CAB is reflected back into new investments in our communities and on projects which will build strong and safe communities. Community safety is about people being safe and, just as importantly, feeling safe within their communities. This, of course, goes beyond policing alone. This fund will ensure that the best proposals get the funding they need and will encourage the development of innovative ways in which to improve community safety from those people who understand the local needs best. The development of innovative ideas will also allow best practice on community safety and youth justice to be shared with other partnerships and communities nationally as new proposals are developed. The fund is open to bodies involved in community safety and will support them in addressing local needs and opportunities for innovation not provided for in other funds managed by departments and agencies. The call for applications for the fund runs from the 11th of April until the 8th of June 2022, and grants will range from €20,000 to €150,000. And an information webinar will be held at 4 p.m. on the 30th of May to provide information for potential applicants to the scheme. If the Deputy is aware of any suitable projects, I would urge him to encourage them to apply for funding. Completed application forms are to be returned by 5 p.m. on the 8th of June 2022 to a dedicated email address, Community Safety Innovation Fund @justice.ie, and further information is available on the Department's website.
Do you welcome the fund in relation to the proceeds of crime in relation to CAB? And I can think of many kind of initiatives and projects that could benefit from that funding. Many, particularly the area that I would represent, that has been kind of greatly affected by criminality, very organised criminality, and their profits largely will go unseen by CAB, but there's an element that will go back into the community benefit. And I think there's no correlation, is from my understanding from the fund, there's no correlation between areas that will be affected, that have been affected by crime. That's in relation to that correlation. So yeah, I think it's a welcome initiative. I think its precursor was the dormant, what was it, dormant accounts fund. I think that was the precursor, and I think for many projects that it benefits from that particular fund.
Deputy Kenny for raising this very important matter, and he's right. And a lot of the dormant accounts funds, a good chunk of that will actually be going into youth justice this year as well, so to help alleviate some of the similar issues. The criteria is fairly broad, so I would encourage organisations certainly to apply. Probably the main criteria that would disallow is that funding could be obtained from another government department or is already receiving funding in terms of a similar type project. But otherwise, the scheme is fairly broad. The funding is expected to increase over the years as well. And this first year really is going to be about evaluating what projects are getting into it. And I think what will be important as well in the evaluation when it's done to be able to see and assess are the communities who need the funding the most getting the funding. So that evaluation will happen at the end of this year once these projects and these fundings go out, and that will be an important part of that evaluation. So you're right, it's not currently, the funding is not directed at any particular areas, but I think it would be very important, and we'll be very conscious when the funding is going out, that it is going into areas that do most need that support.
I think we would agree the best way to tackle crime is to invest in the causes of crime, and I would argue that it's social deprivation or marginalisation, how people are drawn into criminality, and it can be very complex, and crime, particularly around drugs, is extremely profitable, and that comes with the trappings, but with the trappings comes a huge amount of money and profits as such, and there's obviously an echelon that do extremely well out of that generally don't live in them communities, and obviously communities then have to kind of feel the effect of that kind of crime. I won't have time to actually, I suppose, tease out the reasons. I think, you know, we have to have a different approach in relation to how we treat people that get drawn into crime, and they're not bad people. They're just drawn in by the kind of the alternative economy. It's particularly in working class areas where that can be a huge draw, and that can draw in so many people that should not be there. And in an ideal world, we shouldn't have funding coming from CAB via to communities. You know, in a better world where people are not drawn into crime, we'd have a world where governments and state agencies kind of fund projects on their own initiative.
Thank you, Deputy. We're over time. Minister, conclude.
Again, thank Deputy Kenny. And I think the Deputy is touching on is very right. That nobody's born a criminal. Nobody's born with criminal inclinations. Young people are very often drawn into crime and often groomed into crime as well. And that's partly what a key purpose of the Greentown project is about, is figuring out, using evidence-based, how to tackle that grooming of young people into crime. Money is often used to lure them into the criminal activity as well. So it is. And that's an important part of our own youth justice strategy. And a lot of it as well then is young people getting into crime. It's trauma informed as well. You know, coming from perhaps very difficult backgrounds, and it takes a lot of intensive work to help support those young people and redirect them away from criminal activity. So in relation to actually this funding itself, as I say, this we see as a starting point. It's €2 million expected to grow, and certainly there will be an evaluation at the end of it and see how this funding has been used. Thank you.